I don't know that I could have just thrown anybody that idea, and inside of a half an hour drive from the airport to here, they have a coherent biblical worldview and can stand tall. And I'm talking. That's some really strong people, John. There's some very rare people who could do what you just did. So thank you.
I don't have much to lose.
I know you do.
I have
Yes,
so
you
much
do.
to gain.
Yeah.
Listen, if you don't talk about it, people will listen to everybody else who is willing to talk about it.
Right.
That's part of the gift is you
Right.
talk about what people want to talk about, and then you give them a biblical view.
Well, it was rich. Welcome to the Aggressive Life bonus episode. Wasn't planning on doing this morning. I woke up this morning and I just rolled over, looked at my phone, looked at the headlines, and Donald Trump became president. And I just kind of said, like, wow. Now, before we tell you what we're going to do, understand, if you've been around here at all, you understand that I am about as apolitical as you can get. In case you're wondering, if you know me, you won't be surprised by this. I didn't vote for Donald Trump. I didn't vote for Kamala Harris. Donald Trump on what I believe was character issues. Kamala Harris on what I believe was policy issues. Either one won. I would have called them my president. And I serve a king that is not a president who would have still been on the throne no matter what happened. But I also found it just fascinating. And I just, wow, like really, really crazy. And I went to the airport this morning to pick up a growing friend of mine. We have the chicken magnate with us himself, Jon Tyson.
Good morning.
Jon Tyson of the Chicken Dynasty. That's not true.
You're going to throw people off because I went and preached in England. And a guy came and literally thought I was Jon Tyson from Tyson's Chicken. And he's like, why did you fly on this jet? I would have thought you would have had a private plane. I was like, I'm a local pastor. And he goes, you don't do chicken? I was like, no.
Local pastor who doesn't have a college degree.
I do not have a college degree, correct.
And is yet one of
Or a high school diploma.
Or a high school diploma. And is one of the smartest people of our age, and it shows what just good old-fashioned reading can do. Just fascinating. So anyway, John and I went to pick him up because he's coming to help me with my day job, which is senior pastor at Crossroads Church. We got a big event tonight. John's speaking. I can't wait for it. And we just started talking the election, and I thought, gosh, this is pretty fascinating. Would you mind if we just did a little podcast on this? And I called my team. They said, yeah, let's do that. And John said, yeah, let's do it. And we just started having a invigorating conversation. I think you're going to hear something here that you might not hear elsewhere. We're not looking here to take stands. We're looking to debrief it. And you just had a perfect illustration or a nomenclature for what we're going to do right now. What did you say?
Yes, we are doing a pastoral sociological analysis of what happened in this election. So rather than analyzing policies, characters, we're responding to how people reacted, what happened in society and in culture in response to this election, because I don't think a lot of people saw what happened happening. Yeah,
and John and I have a bit of a unique perspective. We combined the amount of people we influence. I'm in the tens of thousands, or I don't know, maybe 100,000. John's absolutely in the hundreds of thousands, spending time with people that are outside of the elite categories, whether you're on the right and the left, and just we're around a lot of common folks. And so I think it informs some of our observations here pretty well.
Yeah.
So we'll start with you. Like, what did you think when you saw this? How are you interpreting this?
Well, the first thing that was interesting to me, so I'm in New York City. I pastor a church right in the middle of Manhattan. The assumption was, and this is an assumption that I think progressive elites tend to have, is we know all, we're the only virtuous, wise ones. Of course our people are going to win. And if people were moral and wise and decent like we are, they would vote the way that we vote. And I think those people were kind of shocked. How could this happen? How could people not view what we view, believe what we believe, and act out like we act? So there was definitely, you could sort of feel, you read it in the New York Times. I read the Times this morning, getting on the plane. You can read it in the op-eds. They're like the despair and the rage. How on earth could this happen? This is the end of the world. So I think, part of the
It's unbelievable. He won the popular vote.
Yeah.
As a person who is way out there on the right, a popular felon, insulter,
Adulterer.
adulterer, the popular vote when he got voted out last time. What the popular vote that said something here.
Yeah, it did say something, and I think what it says is, I think elites can tend to be out of touch with the typical person, and the typical person is trying to pay their bills. The typical person is worried about their kids' education and interest rates, and they're worried about safety and jobs and technology stealing their jobs. They're worried about life itself. And often elites can be worried about ideology and big ideas that sound wonderful, are politically correct. Everybody sort of nods their heads but don't touch their actual cultural concerns. And under pressure, you choose what matters most to you. And under pressure, it is normally care for your families and your direct people. And I think that sort of showed up. I think the messaging, it was a surprising vote for a lot of folks. I called Trump winning. I said I think
you
Trump,
did.
Yeah, I did.
Interesting.
I think Trump's going to win this.
Why? What did you see ahead of time?
Well, I just thought the typical person, the level of distrust of major institutions and major outlets in America is at an all-time high. You feel this is a pastor. People don't trust pastors and official institutions. So the institutions can often be self-congratulatory about how, we hold the power base, we inform opinion. And I think it was a typical person listened to a bunch of alternative sources that sort of shape their opinion more than people think. And now we live in a world where those, some guy's podcast is 10x larger than MSNBC's audience.
Right.
They sort of underestimated the way that culture and media has been democratized itself. And I think that they didn't have a plan. I think the left sort of relied on celebrities and celebrity power. I mean, everyone did. Everyone's trying to get their biggest people out there. But I think they just sort of shot over the head of the typical person. Eminem and rapping with Obama is cool, but I'm not sure. It's a great vibe, but I'm not sure it touches the typical concerns of the average person. Though I do want to say that Barack rapped very well.
Did he?
He did do that.
It
was strong performance.
Yeah. Say what you wanted about Barack Obama. The guy is a classy guy.
Yeah, and you know what? You know what was so great about Barack? Different note was, it was honestly great to have. This is not my commentary on his actual policies and his achievements. That's a separate conversation. But it was great to have a president who could speak as well as the movie actors who were playing presidents. That was refreshing again. A great public speaker.
Yeah, it was. I haven't read all that much. We're recording this right now at 10:14. You've been on a plane. I picked you up at 9:10. I perused some things, so I don't know if there's wisdom conclusions on exactly what tipped it, but I'll give you a couple of my opinions. I listened to Donald Trump on the Joe Rogan podcast.
Okay. I did not catch that.
You said I haven't listened to him. JD Vance.
I heard JD Vance. Yep.
Yeah, I listened to that, and I went, "Wow, this is really impressive." I know there's a lot of things that he said on there that wasn't right or whatever. I know. I'm over that with him.
So you're not analyzing the content of his policies.
No, there's a need to do that, but that's not what I was doing as I was listening there. And I just thought, man, I don't know of any politician that would have sat down for 3 hours with an unscripted conversation, not controlling anything beforehand or afterhand, and just talk. And it was hard to listen to that and not be impressed with the dude for doing that. And I think that was a huge deal. Someone told me they were watching some of the interviews coming out of college campuses, and kids were saying, I listened to that, and all the people I know listened to it, and we just liked the guy after that. I thought that was really impressive, where she refused to do that. She wouldn't do it.
I think it probably created the necessary fuel for people to dismiss his extreme comments.
Yeah.
So they're like, yeah, he said that, but I listened to him for 3 hours, and I don't think that maybe accurately represents him. I think that was probably a definitive interview. 43 million, I think, people listen to that. That's a massive audience.
More people listen to Joe Rogan than MSNBC, CBS, ABC, CNN, Fox News combined, and she wouldn't go and talk. Like she gave him an hour. If you come to me, I'll give you an hour. What? Do you not know what you believe? You're not comfortable in your feet to talk about what you believe? That said a lot.
So the learning on that is the importance of being able to engage with people where they are and to enter into cultural mediums where people actually listen. Like to me, that was a very important lesson. If you only go through the official channels, you're limiting your audience in an incredible way. And what podcasts often do, as opposed to formal interviews, is humanize you.
Yeah.
You start shooting the breeze. Who you are leaks out. And I think that's what people were in the midst of. No one's believing either party at a high level. Everybody knows there's an exaggeration and distortion. And so what they're looking for is those human elements. And I think that probably gave it in the minds of a lot of people.
I think we all feel like in America, we're constantly being fed the party lines. I don't just mean the political party. I mean, whatever it is. We're
big pharma, big tech. Yeah.
All of it. We're just being given that. And when someone comes across as just saying what they believe, I think it's refreshing. And just to talk about our profession a little bit, people who are in the profession of pastoring or having a lot of people follow you, I think one of the things we ought to be learning here is people are not looking for tightly bound up sound bites. They want to feel like they're getting the real us. I wrote a journal entry that I read from stage a couple weekends ago, and people are like, wow, you have word choice and all that stuff and how you write that's a lot different than how you speak. And part of me would say, well, maybe I should go to a tight script because I'm a half-decent writer and my thoughts are more accurate and winsome. But the reason I don't is because I feel like as soon as we start hearing a script, our bullshit meter goes off. I'm like, I don't know. I can't trust this guy. I'd rather have someone feel like they're getting the real me than actually getting a buttoned-up presentation. I think we're learning that.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I think people's ability, maybe that's one of the fears that pastors and leaders have, is that 10 years from now, they're going to have 50 interns and AI bots scraping through all of your sermons, looking to publicly cancel you. So we're restraining our words, not saying what we fully think and feel. Yeah. That's different than being wise. There can be a fear element that's connected to it. And I think, maybe one of the lessons is people would rather hear your honest thoughts, even if they're not curated for sound bites, and they'll forgive you if you don't quite get it right, because in an abundance of words there's always going to be some sins, some mistakes. You don't want to, but it can be very, very hard. You can get a detail wrong, or I was in an interview the other day, I said 96 sermons instead of 98. Now someone could just go mad at me on that. Well, he's misrepresented the amount of sermons Finney preached in the Great Awakening. I was like, oh sorry man, it was a long day, it was 12 hours in, and I got a number wrong. I think people appreciate hearing your heart, and they're more forgiving than we know if they can get in touch with the person behind it.
I think this is a learning for all of us as pastors, leaders, whatever it is. And I'll just speak to the pastor piece, and I'll just admit it. I have definitely been concerned with being perceived the wrong way, saying the wrong thing, and I'll tap dance around certain things to not get myself in trouble. And part of that I think is wise, but part of there's also some weenie-ishness there, which is maybe why I want to do this today on the aggressive life. It's kind of an aggressive move to just say what you believe, and I'm not sure that I've been as clear on what I actually believe about things. Clarity is kindness, and I'm really challenged by that with Trump, and say I got to be more clear. And when I'm in the middle somewhere, great, be in the middle somewhere. Just be clear on that. Yeah. But don't try to give a finely crafted PR statement on everything, Yeah.
I think another thing that is worth paying attention to, I don't know if you've seen the latest research on Gen Z, but Gen Z is definitely trending conservative. I saw some marketing research that someone forwarded over to me, and then some of the Barna research. The assumption is because the media is so liberal that this represents the true opinions of the typical person. And so you are constantly put forth with a cultural agenda that you assume that everybody thinks. I think this election sort of revealed people are not as progressive as perhaps our culture projects. So, fringe positions on human sexuality or government or identity, like many of the things that in the last few years have seen have emerged out of nowhere, that everybody is assuming everybody thinks this now. I think we sort of saw, I don't think society's had a time to process that. And I don't think culture appreciates from the right or the left people shoving something down their throat and then saying, you must believe this now to be a good person.
Right.
Everyone needs time to process and think, and I think it sort of showed us people are asking for more time to consider cultural issues. You know the Overton window, that political theory that basically talked about how change moves through a society. You introduce something radical that goes from radical, it goes from impossible to radical, then it goes from radical to controversial, then from controversial to normal, then normal to desirable, then desirable to legislation, and then legislation to history. And the goal in...
No, I don't know that. That's why I have you in the podcast, John.
Okay,
because you're the smart guy who can pull these things out of your hole and make me feel like I'm stupid.
Talk
anytime you want, John. That's why I have you here.
The Overton window was a political theory of how change happens in society.
Okay.
And sometimes people overplay their hand, assuming everybody's made the leaps you want. And I think this sort of showed us they pushed a little too far too quickly. And it's another lesson that sometimes there's a pastoral component to helping people experience change. And I, as a sort of leader who values change and adaptability, and all of my gift testing is all about like risk taking and leverage and all that sort of stuff. It's a reminder that people need to be brought on a journey. And I think that perhaps the journey that was put forth in terms of cultural agenda was too much for the typical person to go on.
There are so many narratives that are challenged here, and we all should be doing some internal processing on this. Like 50% of the Latino vote went to Donald Trump. 50% when we're told that, he's a hater and, he hates people who are Hispanic. 50% of them voted for him? Okay, that narrative that he's a racist and he hates Hispanic people must not be true, at least not for 50% of America who are Latinos to vote for him. That's a crazy thing.
Listen, I am a white Australian American. I don't feign to understand all the cultural dynamics of the Latino community.
You're an American citizen?
I am an American citizen.
Did you become American citizen?
Yes, paying a lot of tax to be here with a big smile on my face to be in this nation. Here by choice.
What year did you come?
I moved in 97.
How long was your citizenship journey?
How long did it take me? It took me 15 years.
Okay.
Yep.
Right.
But my point is there's components of Latino culture that I think a lot of folks don't understand.
And you would admit that America is way better than Australia. You would admit that Australia is not great as America.
Have you ever been to Australia?
No, why would I go to
Okay, listen.
Why would I go to a pothole like that?
It's an unfair...
Why would I...
Australia's one of the greatest. Australia's a miracle.
Australia was an outcast for thieves and criminals.
And
England shipped all the criminals over there.
Talk about
all the people they didn't want. Why would there be anything there that would be commendable?
Talk about...
You came here. The only thing commendable is now in America.
I came here as a missionary, my friend. I came as a missionary because of the need. Australia's an amazing country. I'm a dual citizen. But here's what I would say. People don't... Latino culture, so depending on who you're talking to, some people would say Latino culture does contain elements of a machismo culture, which is sort of like a male-dominant culture. Oh. And so even though he may speak poorly about components of Latino culture, Trump as a sort of alpha male, aggressive man may resonate with what some people would say are some of the elements of Latino culture that need to be addressed. So to me, that wasn't as much of a surprise. I think, having a little bit of experience with that in New York, I'm in no way defending the comments that happened in Madison Square Garden or whatever. I mean, that just felt unnecessary and unwise. But there's elements of other cultures. Many minority cultures are not as politically correct as white Western cultures. Many minority cultures are not driven by Eurocentric postmodern meta theory. They're just living their lives, And so a lot of times people who just speak to them on a sort of a more honest, plain level can tend to resonate in ways that I think is a little bit unexpected. But again, it's so nuanced, it's so complex. But that was less of a surprise for me, I think, than perhaps other people looking on. Yeah.
Well, getting back to narratives, I'll get that moment, but you just mentioned the Tony Hinchcliffe comment of floating trash and all that stuff. You just looked at Trump's campaign for the last year and you just thought, my gosh, if you would just shut up. I can't believe you're still in this thing. If you would just... And he just kept shooting himself in the foot, left and right, left on everything. And he still won the popular vote. Like if he made half of the guffaws that he made, more mistakes in political theory, arguably than anybody has ever made in all American history. He just made them over and over and over and over and over. And he won the popular vote. What would it look like if he did half as many? I mean, the broad appeal is way more massive than even the results show.
Well, part of it, so I've two responses to that. Part of it could be that's an indicator of cultural decline where we have such low moral standards. We're such pragmatic. We don't care about what people are.
I'm not defending them. I'm saying this says something about our country.
Yeah, I think it's an indicator of moral decline. It's a lack of virtue. On the other side, I don't think, I think the Democrats probably left Joe Biden in too long, and they probably lied about his cognitive ability, and I think they didn't get a proper time.
Probably they did.
Well, they did, yeah. So they didn't get a proper time to come up with candidates, and I think they sort of hurt themselves. It probably wasn't even fair on Kamala to be thrown in like that, though I think she did rise honorably based on what she was handed. But I think her track record, the scramble where she was thrown in, I think she presented herself as a emotionally regulated public figure.
Right.
But again, I think if they'd had another year, if they'd just been honest about Biden earlier, they could have done better in the popular vote.
I'll give her some kudos. I thought she presented herself very reasonable. It's one of the reasons why, if she got elected, I would say she's my president. There's a lot of positive things to have been said about her. I think she did a pretty good job given this tight time frame. And you could talk all you want about should have had a primary, should have had a runoff. Okay, but the Democratic Party, they were just reeling after that Alzheimer's or dementia episode of Joe Biden in the debate. They just needed to stop the bleeding, and they went with it. And, I think she did a admirable job, and she seems like a pretty good woman, actually, to me.
Yeah, I think, America as a nation does have a beautiful story of people rising and becoming something. And I think, suspending commentary on DEI, but just the fact that a minority woman becoming president, that I would have loved that. I would have loved that. That's what America is about. It's people rising from backgrounds where they don't have opportunity and making something of themselves. And that would have been an element to celebrate.
What do you make of her changing on issues? Fracking. She said she was a gun owner. A bunch of things that you were kind of surprised that she would have said 4 years ago. Do you take that as calculated move? Do you take
politics,
it as
mate?
Do you think it's politics, or do you think that's actually who she was and she was able to be a more full expression of herself when she had the microphone?
I can't pretend to know. I just put that under people say whatever. People put whatever needs to be put out there that has even an element of truth in order to garner votes in a really intense political situation. Yeah. So it was probably putting 7 or 8, baits on hooks for new audience that could maybe give people some inroads to who she was.
So speaking of me not wanting to tiptoe tap dance around the middle and not offend anybody, let's talk about something that probably is another. There's another learning here. Something is here. You mentioned the word before, the transgender stuff. I do think that there is a lot of people in our country who love everybody in the LGBTQIA plus community and understand the turmoil that folks oftentimes encounter in there, and are just tired of being called a hater because they believe that if you were born with certain genitalia, that's your gender identity, whether you like it or not. And I wonder how much of that played into this. Like you and I were talking earlier, and we're in the real weeds with a lot of real people, and this is a real issue with a lot of families who haven't seen the signs of their child being confused about their gender until they come home from school. And I would be belittled to even say that a month ago. Like I have my head stuck in the sand. This happens more frequently than is reported on with families dealing with this. And I wonder how much that kind of thing alone, people said, this is getting personal for me. This is really getting weird. I need to get to a safe haven where this isn't an issue. Well,
again, anytime we talk about complex issues, that you're analyzing through 3 or 4 lenses. You're analyzing it through a diagnostic lens. If someone genuinely, legitimately has gender dysphoria, that needs to be treated seriously and separately than someone who is a radical ideologue who is literally trying to destroy any vestiges of a Judeo-Christian sexual ethic. These are different elements. So one is sort of like a deeply personal journey that someone's wrestling with. They're trying to make sense. I can't imagine on a personal level waking up and hating my body and wishing I was in a woman's body. I don't have a personal experience of that, but from the folks I've talked to, we have transgender folks in our church, I would say it's as acute and overwhelming and as present as anything. So that is one issue, okay? That almost has to be treated separately. That needs to be treated psychologically. That needs to be treated pastorally. In terms of the wider gender ideology, where all of a sudden we went from two gay guys who love each other, want to adopt a kid, to there's no such thing as your body is irrelevant to your sexuality and you can choose reality. I think that happened so quickly and with such moral, like it was such a moral issue. It became a kind of self-righteousness, cultural self-righteousness, became a kind of taboo that you could never speak. The typical person didn't, listen, maybe a wrong question, but the typical person doesn't have an acute understanding of biology, gender history. No one's reading Judith Butler while they're watching football. My point is, there's all of these cultural assumptions about gender and sexuality that are assumed by leftist intellectuals that get put onto the culture, and the typical person is so far behind making sense of them. And when they come with the morality, it like all things that are thrust upon people, shoved on people, it gets pushback because people feel like they're losing their agency. In terms of the election, I don't think that particular issue was a big issue. I don't think people would point out maybe men in women's sports, or maybe that had a little bit more traction in terms of an implication. I think it was under the broader category of you're shoving a leftist agenda that none of us have had time to agree with or don't agree with. So I don't know if it was I think it was probably one of six sub-points rather than a definitive issue.
I agree with that. I don't think it was a defining issue for why people did X, Y, Z. I think it's a perfect case example of how the vast majority of Americans is tired of being talked down to, tired of being told that your traditional morality is not right or even not scientific. And people are just reacting about that. They're tired of being told that they're stupid and uneducated and haters and all that stuff.
I think that's definitely true. So, when it was like, I think going back to Ogerfell or whatever, we just want the right to get married too. Who's opposed to like, hey man, it's a secular society. It's not a Christian society anymore. If gay folks want to get married, I think that was like the typical person's thinking. But I think it moved very, very quickly to, and also you cannot believe that if you believe in traditional marriage and don't believe in gay marriage, all of a sudden you're a cultural bigot. I don't think the typical person thought that came with it. I think it came with you do you and we'll do us.
Right.
And it ended up with you can't do you have to do, and I think a lot of people kind of like, whoa, this feels like a little bit of a bait and switch. And non-Christians hate it when Christians do a bait and switch. And I think that traditional folks sort of felt like maybe there was a bait and switch on this issue a little bit.
How do you think the church behaved in this election? Do you think that, what do you think we're going to learn about what the average church or Christian did right or wrong? What can we learn there? It doesn't.
My honest take is I think people had political fatigue, and I think they behaved better out of exhaustion.
Better out of exhaustion? What do you mean by that?
Well, I think they did better than they did in 2016 and better than they did in 2020. There was less rage, less anxiety. But I'm not sure it's because people were more rooted and grounded in Christ and were drawing deeply from the love of God and His Word. I think they were just kind of like maybe shell-shocked and hunkered down. I think there was maybe a lot more clear thinking about the limitations of politics. I think there was a few pastors whose sermons got some scale that I think were disproportionately helpful for folks. And so maybe
like who? Like what? I don't know these sermons. You have an example?
I think people dug up some of Keller's old stuff. Josh Howerton, I don't know if you know who he is. He's got a big church in Texas. I know he certainly had a couple viral moments. Yeah, I mean, I think on both sides. I think Charlie Dates' stuff on politics both sides of it. I think people sort of spoke into it. Would they try to take it seriously? But it seemed like the political idolatry had worn off a little bit. I think people weren't as intense into the idolatry. Now, there's always the extreme fringe, but I will say this. The Atlantic did that investigation where they asked the question, where does evangelical zeal from deconstructors go? So someone who's got evangelical instincts, raised in the church, who loses their faith, where does that evangelical converting zeal go? And their answer was, it goes on to politics. So I think there was
fascinating.
I think the church did better and the culture did worse in some ways.
Yeah, I don't know that the church did better as far as political idolatry. I think just a higher percentage of us, and I put myself in this camp, just said, whatever, I'm done with it. I'm not placing my hope in politics, and I'm just going to be a bystander over here. And I'll vote, but I'm not going to place my hope in that. And at least that's where I was. But that doesn't keep me from being fascinated by the sociological dynamics of what this says about our country, which is where I am right now.
Yeah, I agree. So I was at a pastors' meeting at the Westway Diner, where the Seinfeld show was dreamed up yesterday with a bunch of pastors in Manhattan. And there were, I'm just trying to think who was there, it's like 2 Asian Americans, a couple of Australians, African American pastor. And the attitude was almost universal, which is like, look, man, Jesus is king.
Yeah.
Seek first the kingdom. Jesus is king. Not saying politics doesn't matter. You had the chance to pray. Prayer does a lot. Prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. Pray a lot. Vote. You get to participate in a free democracy. Wow, that's great. Let's get back to making disciples and planting churches and serving the poor and getting back to Jesus' agenda.
Right.
And it doesn't mean those things don't come through politics, but I think a lot of people are just realizing there's way more agency. I've talked about this quite a bit, but Neil Postman, in Amusing Yourselves to Death, has this little thing called liar versus lover. And the liar is what he calls low information to action ratio, which means you know everything about that which you can do nothing about. So you know about the Wuhan virus, you know about Kamala's policy, but you have your agency is vote. But the thing is, in your everyday life, you can know every neighbor on your street. You can give your money. You can serve your local community. You can get in the PTA. You can serve. You've got so much agency, and we tend to know nothing about that, which we can do everything about. And it's just a reminder to get back to mission. Use what you've got, kingdom agency, where you are. You can do a lot about that. Vote, pray. Get back to where your agency lies.
Well, maybe the most positive thing about this election, where I sit right now, the most positive thing is it's over.
Or has it just begun?
Well, I'm not saying political fixation is over, but like, okay, it doesn't have any. There's no signs that the Kamala Harris campaign is going to contest it, or there's going to be a
no violence.
January 6th
I haven't seen violence yet.
And had Trump lost, I can't imagine that he would have played any nicer this time than last time. It would have just kept going on and on. I think
those militias make me nervous.
Oh man, sheesh, no kidding. And man, I got caught up in the firestorm last time. I wrote what I thought was a pretty innocent article that went onto our app article page, and I guess it wasn't very innocent. It just stirred up a lot of stuff when I gave my comments on January 6th, and I just feel like, all right, I think it's over here, at least this election. What can we now, as Americans, as Christians and pastors, where should we be positioning ourselves right now, emotionally, intellectually, spiritually, going forward?
Well, one thing I just wanted to comment on that I want to make sure we touch. You know what I thought was atrocious? The amount of money spent on these elections, mate. Like, if that money went towards under-resourced neighborhood schools, I mean, the misallocation of resources is extraordinary. Talk about bad secular stewardship, mate. I mean, that was... Now, I understand why everyone has a vested interest, but that to me was grievous.
Right, and then, Elon Musk could come in and put his tens and tens of millions of dollars in and maybe sway the election, and that's his political right. And by the way, everyone on the left has Reid Hoffman, their folks. They can do the same thing. It's not like somebody played unfair, but boy, what would it be like if you said, hey,
we're giving $1 million a day to whoever's got, yes.
Right, so it's going to be our taxes. We got 6 weeks, and you get this, and away we go.
Yeah, billionaires doing $1 million a day for whoever has the best idea for their local community. I mean, what could that do? Could do a lot, and it would stir the cultural imagination about what's possible locally as well. What should the church? Well, this is a beautiful moment for the church, because the church has the truth. The gospel is the truth. The church has the capacity to form category-defining community, and I think we forget that. When you elevate Jesus Jesus and the kingdom of God above pure political parties, you're able to form a new humanity. And I remember reading a commentary on the book of Galatians and touching on Colossians, where it says there's neither Jew nor Gentile, slave nor free, male nor female. Right. They said there was not a room in the Roman Empire where people sat at a shared table and that sociological configuration was possible. Only because of Jesus do you get those kinds of people in relationships together. Right. And the church at its best is when it is bridging cultural divides, elevating the new humanity based on who we are in Christ and putting that forth. That should be a big part of what we're doing now.
This is one of the greatest arguments for why huge, massive churches are positive for our culture, is because it's in huge, massive churches where you always have diversity and a level of eclectic thoughts and all that stuff that you just tend to not find in a church of 200.
Yeah.
Where everyone comes together who is the same. And churches our size or your size, you're forced to be around people who look different than you, who think different than you, that vote differently than you, and forced to find a way of peace, at least stomaching, or the old school word of tolerating, because they're there and you got to learn to tolerate them. I think that's a positive thing, and most Americans are never in an environment where there's people who aren't like them and think differently, where they've got to learn to bear with one another.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an opportunity for the church. And again, I think it's the importance of friendships, and that's what churches provide.
Yeah.
They provide a social fabric that doesn't exist in the world. Let alone talking about the loneliness epidemic, how isolated people are, how much anxiety there are. The church should just open its doors and saying, if you're looking for love and if you're looking for rest, here we are. And so it's a great day to be a Christian and have the answers and have the love of Jesus.
Well, and speaking of anxiety, we all know, you and I are just dealing with anxiety is just through the roof. And I'm not just talking even about the amount of meds that are consumed to deal with our anxiety. I'm just talking about a pervasive dread and anxiousness that exists. And I think that part of why that is because when you've been told and you believe that there is no personal God who has created you, there's no personal God who loves you, there is no backstop, there is no larger goal that a divine hand is working towards through his people, of course you should be anxious. Of course you're going to be anxious if your preferred politician doesn't win, because that was supposed to give you the meaning and hope that you needed, and that never delivers itself. We as believers have got to be the beacon of anti-anxiety and hope, no matter who is in office, because we do fall under the caring, protective hand of a God who's knit us together in our mother's womb and always has a second chance and never wastes anything.
Yeah, that is... We come from nowhere. We're here for no reason. Life is hard. You're getting screwed over. You'll be dead soon and no one cares. Turns out that's not good for the human heart.
Yeah.
At the same time, when you live in a world where most of the dream that's foisted on you is an illusion that you're never going to have access to. Like what hope is there? And and again, we have eternal longings. And if you cut off eternity, you put a crushing weight on the typical person to get an eternal life worth of joy in a few short years. And it's just the heart is bigger than one lifetime. That's why we're made for eternity. The Bible says he's put eternity in our hearts.
The economics are pretty clear that the younger you are, the harder your future is economically. It's just not as easy to do things that have built American wealth in previous generations, like get into a house. It's not as easy when the market just keeps going up, 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 and up. One of the guys I listen to, and we're ideologically in a different place on many, many things, but I think he's pretty brilliant, is Scott Gallagher. You know, he gives a whole...
Oh, Prof. Gallagher?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, he's got a lot of good things to say.
Oh, he totally does. He has a TED Talk on how we as older people are protecting wealth for ourselves, and younger people have an advantage when there's a crash because then they can buy in. Well, we're doing everything we can to protect things going up, 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 up. And it just, younger people just feel frustrated. They can't get in the game. And that's creating another level of anxiety and probably some level of backlash as well.
You were made to know God. You are made to make a difference. And everybody has a ministry in the church and a mission in the world. And to the degree that you get beyond yourself and self-focus on the business of loving and serving is to the degree that which your anxiety. Now, I'm not talking about clinically diagnosed anxiety. I'm talking about cultural angst. It will lift, and research shows it will lift when gratitude gets back in, when you have an others focus, when you get a sense of purpose and calling. And I think we undersell all of the research that shows that people who pray, people who serve, people who belong to churches live longer, sleep better, have less anxiety, have better sex, have more stable marriages. This is a great time to be a Christian.
That is categorically provable and true.
Yeah.
But that doesn't get airplay. I think that maybe there's never been a better time for us as the church to be a beacon of hope and to welcome people into our midst who don't hold Christian views. Because people who lost the election are more in need of hope than ever before. They're more in need of a guiding star than ever before, and his name is Jesus. And I think of churches or Christians who might have appreciated a Donald Trump presidency cannot gloat here and not just go, we won the culture war. My gosh, we call this thing a culture war. Do we have
I like Marco talks about culture care. That feels better to me. That feels like better stewardship.
Right.
Yeah.
Who wants to come over the other side in a culture war? But if we can care for people who are struggling after this and be a safe place, that could be a really great redemptive opportunity for the gospel.
I'm not a street preacher, not even opposed to it. I'm just not. But if I got on the train, sometimes people come to New York and they preach on the subway. If I was to preach on the subway, I would stand up and I'd say, dear New York, it's early and you look tired and you're going to go and grind it out and try and get a sense of meaning and purpose from your work that it can't deliver. And you're going to get on a dating app tonight hoping to touch that void in your soul, and that's not going to work either. And I just want to say, if you're weary, Jesus says, come to me and I will give you rest. So, dear New York, if you want rest, come to Jesus. That would be my street preach.
Well, you could probably do that with that accent of yours, and people would
They'd
listen.
probably punch me in the face.
No, they wouldn't.
Let's get a little feisty on the trains these days. I try and stay off them.
If I said that with my Pittsburgh accent, they would go, who is this knucklehead? But you could get away with that, Jon Tyson.
Well, maybe I should do it.
You should absolutely
next time you're in the city, and if it's me, just say, amen.
All right. Brother, this has been great. Anything else you want to say you think is relevant for us before we check out here?
Last thing I would say, that the book of, or I referenced it earlier, but the book of James says that the prayers of a righteous person are powerful and effective. And ultimately, there's a sovereignty in who God raises up and puts in power. That's Romans 13. But there is also an invitation to prayer. And he uses Elijah, who's the one who opened and closed heaven and released rain. And I just would say, take your political angst and turn it into intercession, and you'll be amazed to see how the kingdom advances despite who is president.
Well, Chronicles, is it First Chronicles or Second Chronicles, where it says, the eyes of the Lord look.
Or second, yes.
Second Chronicles 26, 24.
Gosh, I just preached on the Second Chronicles 9.
Was it 9?
1 Chronicles 9.
There's
I'm
a
so
2 in there
tired.
somewhere. There's a 2 in there somewhere.
I just preached on King Asa. That's Second Chronicles.
That's right.
I'm so tired. Fire me.
It doesn't change the point, which is the eyes of the Lord search to and fro through the land to seek someone whose heart is to strengthen the heart that's fully committed to Him.
Yeah.
And we need to have people who are fully committed to Jesus, and not the Republican or Trump ideology or the Democratic ideology, whatever, fully committed to Him, because that's who He strengthens. And I hope we take that lesson and we allow ourselves to get strengthened. It's great. All right, man. Hey, thanks for being here, and thanks for giving us wisdom and thinking on your feet for something we're planning on doing today. It's good. Dirt, that's good. Anything else?
Great.
Dirt, thank you to you too, Dirt, for getting a call, early morning call saying, sorry, Dirt, we're doing a podcast right now.
Yeah, but Jon Tyson's in town, so
Heck yeah,
Freaking
man.
do it.
That's kind.
With
Heck
his
yeah.
chicken nuggets he brought
right,
with
he
us.
brought 'em all.
He brought them all. So, yeah, this is going out. We're not going to have any edits. We don't have time for it. It's just going to go out. So, you look like you want to say something else. I always have you talk. When you look like you
No,
want to
that's
talk,
great.
John.
That's great,
No, what are you
I
going
was
to say?
going to say, how can we not know where that passage is, man? I just preached on that. That is so
It's
weak.
Second Chronicles 16:9. I just
Second Chronicles 16:9.
I know 69.
There was a two in
Second
it.
Chronicles
16.
16:9.
gosh.
16.
It's the Cushite army. I know the whole story, and I just can't.
All right, well, second Chronicles, because that's where my 2 is coming from.
Yeah,
All
that's
right.
a 2 right there. Yeah.
Jeez, well, I have a great defense. My defense is I have the memory of a goldfish. So that's my defense. I
My
don't
defense
remember
is
anything.
I'm tired and aging slowly.
No, yeah, that's definitely within your wheelhouse, John. We
Sorry.
expect those things
Sorry
from
to
you.
disappoint. Ask me another verse. Maybe I know it. It's tragic.
John 3:16.
For God so loved. We're still good.
All right. Hey, we'll see you next time in The Aggressive Life. Thanks for joining us on this journey toward aggressive living. Find more resources, articles, past episodes, and more at briantome.com. Pre-orders for my newest book, a 60-day devotional called The 5 Marks for Man, 60 Days to a Powerful Life, are open right now on Amazon, along with all the other books in the 5 Marks library. Be sure to leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcast. Then send an email to that's dirt, at briantome.com to get a free Aggressive Life sticker. Find more on Instagram at briantome. The Aggressive Life is a production of Crossroads Church, Cincinnati, Ohio.